Hello, my name is Walt Trissler. I'm an amateur historian and Southern apologist. Today I have the honor of interviewing Mr. James Ronald Kennedy, which is part two of an interview that's being conducted regarding their book, The South Was Right. And they have come out with a new edition, a third edition.
Sure.
I'm going to ask Mr. Kennedy about some of the differing points of this edition as compared to the first two. Now, Ronnie.
Yes, Walt.
You mentioned the post-war North and South bargain for peaceful reconciliation. What was that bargain, and did the United States maintain that bargain?
Well, the post-war era is a unique era. The southern states were essentially a conquered nation, so the North was really concerned what might happen with these people if they viewed themselves as a conquered people. They may even go running off down to Mexico and want to get a join in with them and start another civil war. So in order to prevent a secession movement, the North and South came to a gentleman's agreement. Donald and I call it a détente. It was an agreement between two parties, and part of that agreement was that the South would renounce or never again go for secession. We would renounce the right of self-government, which is a very American right acknowledged in and announced in the Declaration of Independence. But the South said, we'll no longer call for an independent nation of our own. We'll remain loyal to the United States, and in return, the North would allow the South nominal control of what I call puppet governments, governments that were put in by the point of bayonets, but nonetheless we would give a nominal control of those governments, very similar to the way the Irish were given nominal control of Irish government before they kicked the English out in the early 1920s. But that was the agreement. And we, in turn, were given the right to also celebrate our Confederate heritage, and the North would even accept Confederate veterans as American veterans and American heroes, and the South would become sort of a stepchild of the Union, but nonetheless our heroes would be honored and respected. The North really engaged for a good while post-Reconstruction in this celebration. The United States military, obviously the military bases that was named for Confederate generals. They had submarines, one named for Lee and one named for Jackson. I find that really amazing or amusing that they would name Army officers after submarines, but nonetheless, they did. They had tanks, the Lee and the Stuart, named after Confederate generals. So this was all part of the celebration of Confederate history and the acknowledgement that, yes, the South, you're not necessarily an equal part of the Union, but we're going to let you control your area, and we'll celebrate Confederate heritage, and you can show your Confederate flags. All of this was part of that gentleman's agreement. Even the post office got in on the act. Starting in the 1920s, they started issuing commemorative stamps of Confederate veterans. They had stamps for Lee and Jackson and Confederate veterans in general. The last commemorative stamp was done in 1970, so for a great stretch of time there. The United States Mint got in on it. They minted a 50-cent piece that commemorated the Stone Mountain of showing Davis and Lee and Jackson. So yes, the United States for a while kept their end of the bargain, but something happened. The last decade of the 20th century, the United States broke that bargain. We didn't break it. The South didn't break it. We have kept it. An outpouring of Southern blood in every war since Appomattox proves that we have kept our end of the bargain. As a matter of fact, the small town of Fayetteville, North Carolina, produces more actual soldiers today in today's Army than the entire city of Manhattan, New York, even though Manhattan has 8 times the population. So the South has done its share to live up to that bargain, yet that bargain has been cruelly and slanderously broken by the Yankee Empire.
Oh. All right, my friend, a couple of more points I want to ask you. Chapter 10, for example. Let's talk about Chapter 10 and get you to explain some of that. It's titled, Only Empires Are Invisible. Now, how does this relate today?
Well, as I said, only empires are indivisible. And that's very, very important to note. Only empires are indivisible. Now, stop and think about it. Gorbachev, when the Baltic states wanted to secede from the Soviet Union, did he say, oh, yes, this is freedom, you have the right to go? No, he wanted to keep his union together. And if his union had held together, he would have held those Baltic states. But the whole union collapsed, the Soviet Union collapsed. King George III, when the United States, the colonies, when they seceded from the British Empire, King George said, oh, no, my empire is indivisible and I'll send the army to make sure. Well, freedom won, nonetheless. All empires consider themselves indivisible. And that's very important because Lincoln and the Republican Party declared the United States to be indivisible. They created the Yankee Empire. They transformed the constitutionally limited Republic of Sovereign States from a constitutional republic. They transformed it illegally, illegitimately into a supreme federal government that morphed into the Yankee Empire, the Confederate States of America, a sovereign nation, democratically elected sovereign nation, was the first captive nation of the Yankee Empire. But we were not and have not been the last.
In the 1994 edition of The South Was Right, you warned then that the Yankee Empire was initiating a campaign of cultural genocide. It's apparent today that campaign of anti-South cultural genocide is well underway. How do we defeat that?
Well, that's the important thing. You know, this new book, the third edition, is about 40 to 50% new material. So we wanted to address this. In the 1994 edition, we warned and we said, Southern heritage people, look out. They are coming after our monuments, our statues, our flags. And Donald and I were sort of given the bum's brush by many in the Southern Heritage Movement. We were accused of being radicals, extremists, being too confrontational, you know. Well, you see what that got us. So here we are 26 years later, and there's very little left for us. So it's time that we do something. Now, in the second edition, we recommended a political movement to restore the constitutional republic of sovereign states. No one took us up on that offer, but now we've come back and say, okay, it's time now that we create, if we want to be free, if we want to maintain liberty. And remember, we were fond of saying that the South, Southern heritage, we're the low-hanging fruit. The neo-Marxists go after us because we have no state, no government to protect our interests. So that we're easy. But once they get us, they're going after, they pull down statues of Lincoln, of Teddy Roosevelt, Kate Smith, because she had the audacity to sing God Bless America. So you see, these neo-Marxists, they weren't just after the rebel flag. They were after all the freedom-loving values that America represents. They want to destroy America and give us their utopian vision of a socialist America. So we've got to do something. We, as Southerners, first of all, because we should know better than anyone else. We have a right to be free. So we need to establish, and we recommend, and by all means, read the the introduction, the preface to the 1990 to the 2020 edition, the third edition. Read the preface. It's like a page and a half, but we sort of give a quick overview of what we're talking about. We need to establish provisional governments in every southern states to work as a lobbying and as a public relations group to push forward toward the idea of reestablishing the constitutional republic of sovereign states. And you can do that by passing a constitutional amendment. Now, if that fails, then what do? Go into the gulags? No. If the blue states refuse to return to the true American system of government, then there's only one thing left. That's for all the red states, not just the South, all the red states to start with a secession movement. And not just the red states, also the red counties in blue states. People who love freedom have a right to be free. The South has always been the bulwark against tyranny, and we are today, and we'll start the movement here in the South. It'll spread. It'll look like the Louisiana Purchase, all those states up all the way to Canada. But we have a right to be free, and that's what we're talking about.
Well, listen, you've already hit on it very much, but I did want to ask you and give you an opportunity to add to the neo-Marxist shadow government that you describe in the third edition. Would you do that?
All right, very quickly. We look at the people, the deep state. You know, a lot of people call it the deep state. Eisenhower called it the military-industrial complex. That's part of it, but it's much more. It's the corporate lobbyists in Washington, D.C., but most importantly, it's the monopolists. Those monopolists that control the mainline media, the digital media, all the institutions of influence. They are the ones that are the neo-Marxist shadow government that controls thought in America. And that's the ones that we've got to have a counterbalance to. That's why we need our provisional governments established in every state, every red state, and every red county in blue states.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, one more question for you. On Chapter 18, that's a new chapter. Mm-hmm. It's titled, "The Bargain is Broken. Now Nothing is Off the Table." What are you saying in that chapter?
Well, just as I just discussed, we're talking about setting up provisional governments in every red state in America, every red county in America. We're going to reclaim liberty in America. And the South's going to be the catalyst for this happening. And it's there. It's part of the new part of our book. And let's just say that it's something that must be done if we are to remain free.
Ronnie, excuse me. Thank you for your input. Thank you and you and Donnie both for your hard work. May God bless you and the efforts.
Thank you.
That concludes our interviews.